Honorable Mantashe. Order, honorable members. Order, honorable members. Honorable Mantashe.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker of the National Assembly, Mamtoko Titiza, Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, Umerifilwe Mtsweni-Tsipane, the President of the Republic of South Africa, His Excellency Cyril Matamela Ramaphosa, the Deputy President of the Republic, His Excellency Paul Spokoshe Mashatile, honorable members of this House. We start this debate with a big temptation to engage one another on peripheral battles and imagined battles, rather than focusing on the task at hand. And we have chosen not to succumb to that temptation, Honorable President, and not to play to the gallery, but opted to engage on real important issues.
Honorable Mantashe, can you take your seat? What is the point of order, Honorable President?
Speaker, I wanted to check if it's parliamentary for Honorable Mantashe to put the wrong button in the wrong...
Order, honorable members. Order. Honorable Josie, can you please
I'm protecting the dignity of GNU now.
Honorable Josie. Honorable Josie. Honorable members, can we take ourselves seriously and each other seriously too? This is an important debate, and I don't think it is an honor for each one of us to actually cast aspersion or to actually impugn on another person's character. Honorable Mantashe, you can please proceed.
Okay, thank you, Honorable Speaker. Thank you, Honorable Rosie, for helping me out. Thank you. So the real challenge facing us in this House is to put our heads together and find lasting solutions to massive problems facing our country. Shadow boxing is not a helpful approach to that. It's better to be in the ring and battle on real issues. It is in this context that I will focus on one apex priority that the Government of National Unity has announced by the President. I'm focusing on the inclusive economic growth and employment creation. That is quite important. It's a burning crisis for the country. The National Development Plan 2030 enjoins us to eliminate poverty, reduce inequality, and make it a priority for all of us to create employment opportunity for the people of South Africa. If we subscribe to the objectives of the NDP and agree that we have a collective responsibility to address high unemployment, we must therefore put our heads together and come up with formula that will work and ensure employment is created. To this end, I'm going to focus on the primary sectors of the economy. Primary sectors of the economy are important in the sense that it is strong primary sectors that will ensure that there is sustainable secondary and tertiary development in the economy. So those primary sectors are mining, agriculture, and petroleum. Those are primary sectors of the economy. And therefore, in our view, we need to deal with them, address them decisively to set a foundation for secondary and tertiary economic development in the country. And then we must also respond to the outcry of our people that our jobs are being taken by foreign nationals. It's a cry. It is not getting the right interpretation. The reality of the matter is, it is the bottom end of the labor market that needs our attention. For example, we support the visa regime as envisaged to attract skills and investment into the economy. We support that fully. But we say it should be complemented by us paying attention to the fact that at the lower end of the market, we're not paying attention. And that is where the employment crisis is. In other words, we make the point that it is not xenophobic to say, please protect sectors that do not want complicated skills. That will be your hospitality. It will be your hospitality, it will be your farm work, it will be your construction. And I'm sure people who took time to monitor the George crisis and disaster, you will know that it exposed our laxity in dealing with construction sector as a sector. And the attractiveness of employers is that those sectors, it's easy to invite anybody at substandard wage rates. And it is this government that has a responsibility to deal with that issue and monitor it. Now, every time I go to a restaurant, I won't mention the names because I normally say it's upmarket when it is not in the upmarket. That is the legacy of being a rural boy. But you go to a restaurant, I hardly get served by a South African. We can't accept that. You go to a farm, including shepherds and actually people who look after livestock in rural areas are attracted from the neighboring countries. And we say we have an unemployment crisis. We must deal with that issue. So, having said that, it is quite important, therefore, that we confront the question of cheap labor being an attractive alternative to employment creation. We must deal with that issue. Now, we must draw a lesson from the mining sector. It's a sector I worked in, which used to have 70% of its workforce from the neighboring countries. Today, that portion is less than 20%. And there is a process that took us to that stage, and that process can be used as a lesson to educate us in dealing with challenges facing our society. For us, in the mining sector, as we set sights on addressing obstacles granting mining permits and licenses, we must translate this emergence of new mines irrespective of size. If we accelerate dealing with the backlogs, new mines must be built and people must be employed. We firmly believe that the 400 million seed capital provided by the department working with IDC is a good start because mining starts with exploration where you discover quantity and quality of a mineral. Then you can mine and then you can process, it goes on. And linked to this is the question of supporting the artisanal mines. We're going to go to the many financial institutions and companies to support that initiative where we train artisanal miners. Many people ask me, what is an artisanal miner? I say it's a miner who uses chisel and hammer to mine. That section of the workforce is going to deal with a problem which attracts illegal mining, sterilizing marginal deposits of the mine. And therefore, those must be used to expand the labor base of the mining industry. Honorable Speaker, our country is endowed with petroleum deposits that are not yet exploited. We appeal to all South Africans to appreciate that our quest for exploration of oil and gas deposits is not a nice to have. It is important to turn around the composition of our economy, and therefore that will translate into the growth of the economy. And it will require another additional intervention. Let's deal with foreign-funded NGOs that block exploration of gas and oil, because that is blocking economic development. And we must confront it and deal with it and allow that. That doesn't mean we are not serious about responsible mining and exploration. Do that, but don't block development, because employment is a function of economic growth and development. So we're making that submission. The justice system must also look into that reality of a view to find solution to these cases up in court, because they go to court. NI, which moved to Cote d'Ivoire, was taken to court 67 times. It packed their suitcases and went to Cote d'Ivoire and made huge discoveries of oil in Cote d'Ivoire. Let's deal with that. So the justice system must accelerate the process. We must therefore accept unreservedly the need to responsible mining and petroleum exploration. That is conscious preserving the environment while accelerating development. Beneficiation is an issue that has been in our vocabulary for many years, and it is time for it to be implemented practically. Beneficiation, sometimes a nice word, but its meaning is value addition. We must not export raw commodities as they are. We must add value here and not export jobs. But there are interventions that must be done. There are interventions that must be done there. The first one is that for beneficiation to happen, we must have reliable, efficient, and affordable electricity supply. Because if you don't have that, beneficiation will collapse. Number two, we should actually have an incentive scheme for beneficiation. Beneficiation is an economic activity in the value chain of mining, and it should be treated as a business. Therefore, incentives are important for that section. That may include granting tax holidays to attract beginning of that sector. It can also mean taxing exports to discourage export of raw commodities. And therefore, we must engage the business to introduce a particular electricity dispensation. For example, there's nothing wrong in developing a commodity price-linked electricity tariffs. We did have it in this country. We can look into those alternatives. Now, as we address the question of unemployment and develop framework for inclusive economic growth, we should bear in mind that involving black South Africans in economic activity is not a favor. Okay? It's not a favor. It is a necessary intervention, because for many years South Africans were not active in the economic activity. Therefore, the question of black economic empowerment and affirmative action is a necessary intervention in the economy. Now, access to land, I'm not talking the same way as Honorable Shope, not the same. But the point I'm making is access to land is a capital asset for economic activity. Therefore, it is going to be important for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I now call upon Honorable Malema.
Thank you very much. We want to acknowledge the leadership of all political parties that form part of the progressive forces here in Parliament. This includes the leadership of Umkhonto weSizwe Party, the African Transformation Movement, the United African Transformation, and the National Colored Congress. We want to salute the people of South Africa who have rejected the former liberation movement that has enjoyed political power for the last 30 years. Today, that era has come to an end. It is beyond doubt that the former liberation movement failed to turn the political power into economic power. As our forefathers in the liberation struggle in the African continent said, political power without economic power is meaningless. Mr. President, You indeed spoke like a badly wounded buffalo yesterday. You spoke like a given up soul. Nothing inspirational came from that tired speech yesterday. You didn't speak like a person who declined electoral support with 17% to less than 50%. How on earth do you repeat a Sona speech that made you lose elections? You were saying to South Africans yesterday, in no so many ways, that you learned nothing out of these historic elections to an extent that you want to continue business as usual. We grew up being told that some of you were collaborators, but we gave you some benefits of the doubt. It was said in this house that you personally wrote a letter to the apartheid police accusing your fellow comrades of planting communist ideas in your head, and we refused to believe that story at that time. It now makes sense that despite the apartheid regime being so oppressive against all freedom fighters, you peacefully and uninterruptedly attended university, and you were given your first job by the ambassadors of apartheid, capitalism, and colonialism. Without a hassle, you bought yourself a first car and a house with the assistance of the Urban Foundation, which was anchored by the Ruperts and the Oppenheimers, while your comrades were sleeping under trees in exile and languishing in jails. We asked ourselves as to how did you form a union of mine workers without being a mine worker? Can't you know? You were the conveyor belt between the workers and the super exploitative mining capitalists in South Africa after the Oppenheimers and Anglo-American had concluded that the mine workers must be organized. Our elders in the struggle have made allegations before in this house that throughout the struggle against apartheid, you were insulated from any form of arrest and harassment by the apartheid system. Towards the end of apartheid, you shockingly placed yourself at the center of the negotiation for the end of apartheid. No one knows how you arrived to be at the center of the negotiations of our liberation. It now explains as to why so many compromises and capitulations were made, leading to a situation where economic power remained in the hands of the white minority.
Malema, can you take a seat? There's an order by the Deputy Chief Whip. Honorable Chairperson of the NCOP, you instructed that the honorable member, Honorable Malema, must sit down. Before I raise my point of order, Honorable House Chairperson, Honorable Chairperson of the NCOP, the Honorable Malema is casting aspersion on the President, on the persona of the President. Can he please bring in a substantive motion to support his statements that he's making in the House? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chief Whip. The order is sustained. Rules does make provision that if the member imputes improper motive against another member, you may do that by way of a motion, and therefore that has to be substantiated. And therefore, Honorable Malema, can you then proceed with your speech? I see there's another point of order that's been raised on DA.
Withdraw what?
Thank you, Madam House Chair. Madam House Chair, I rise on a point of order in terms of Rule 92.10, which indicates that when a point of order is raised during the debate, the member called to order must resume his or her seat, and after the point of order has been stated, the presiding officer by the member raising it The member raising the point of order must likewise immediately resume his or her seat when she has concluded his or her submission. Madam House Chairperson, can I just get clarity on the fact when the Deputy Chief Whip of the ANC raised the point of order, the member at the podium remained standing, and I would just like your ruling on that. Thank you.
Honorable Malema, we have requested that you take your seat, but despite that, you did. Thank you very much. As I have ruled on the previous order, that was raised by the Chief Whip, Honorable Malema, can you take your podium and apologize on what you've just said? The order of the
I must apologize for not sitting down.
Can you take your seat, Honorable Malema? The order was raised with regards to casting aspersions on the President. Can I be allowed time, honorable members? I will then allow you space. Order, honorable members. The order was raised with regards to the honorable member casting aspersions on the President and accordingly. Honorable members, can you please take your seat? I have not recognized you, Honorable Shivambo. Can you please take your seat? I have not concluded. Honorable member, can you allow me please to conclude? Honorable Malema, you can take the podium, but please, can you please withdraw or rather not repeat what you have said earlier on as you proceed with your speech? Honorable members, please, can you? Honorable members, Honorable Malema, can you sit down? Honorable Shivambo.
On a point of order, House Chair, we are going to forgive you because you are new, you don't know the rules of this parliament. When a point of order is raised, you must specify the rule and the specific sentence or a phrase that you say this is a violation of the rules of the National Assembly. What the Commander-in-Chief is doing is to give a political characterization of a phenomenon. That is a point of debate. It's not casting aspersions. How else do we deal with political questions without giving context to what got transpired to where we are now? Where else do we say that except here in this parliament? You can't suppress political debate because of your misinterpretation and misunderstanding of the rules. Please allow the speech to finish. And then when we later on go to Rules Committee, we're going to illustrate to you with proper evidence when we're inducting you that the rules do not say what you are saying that you must withdraw. Please be patient with this process. We are going to understand them when time progresses. Currently, your application is incorrect.
Thank you, Honorable Shivambo. Honorable members, Rule 53 makes provision that if a member makes personal reflection on the member's integrity that are equally offensive or damaging, which cannot be necessarily substantiated. Therefore, that should be done by a way of a motion so that a member can substantiate what he's been saying. At this point in time, Honorable Malema has cast aspersion against the President, which needs to be substantiated accordingly, and therefore the order remains sustainable. Honorable Malema, as you proceed with your debate, can you kindly refrain from making such aspersion? Thank you very much. You may proceed.
I must proceed. Thank you very much. It now explains as to why so many compromises and capitulations were made, leading to a situation where economic power remained in the hands of the white minority, leaving black people with meaningless political power. We can today confirm that it was pure infiltration by forces of darkness. When it was clear President Mandela is not going to make you the first deputy president of the democratically elected South African government in 1994, you threw tantrums and even boycotted his inauguration. The same President Mandela you asked us to celebrate yesterday, you missed the historic moment to do so in 1994 because of personal aggrandizement. Like many people in South Africa, I stood here in this house and said we will give you the benefit of the doubt, believing that the allegations against you of being a collaborator might not be true. I will tell why I'm giving you this personal account. It is necessitated by your activities, actions, and decisions over the past weeks since the electoral defeat of the former liberation movement, which demonstrated clearly that in the battle against neo-apartheid and neo-colonialism, you chose the side of the oppressor like you did in the past, yet pretending to be with us, the oppressed people. Why will the apartheid beneficiaries say that among all black political leaders, you are the only one they can work with, to an extent that you are called a better black with a better accent, and you believe them over us? They call us criminals who must be arrested, whether we have committed any crime or not, because we disagree with them politically, and you believe them over us. Your own brothers and sisters who come from Shawela and Venda with you are today looked down because of you. You have committed to be a representative of the oppressor. The white capitalist establishment is willing to turn a blind eye to even serious allegations of wrongdoing against you, because through you, they believe that they will perpetuate the exploitation of the oppressed class and reverse the gains of the political freedom attained in 1994. It doesn't matter what you say, but we want to state categorically that the coalition between the Democratic Alliance and the former liberation movement is a sellout position typical of collaborators who sacrifice and compromise the struggle against apartheid and colonialism. White minority arrogance has increased under your term of office. You should have seen them yesterday when you were speaking. It was like you are a true Tabaneka Koko Helen Zille. You boldly take these counter-revolutionary and reactionary decisions because you know you have a full protection of white capitalist establishment. All the things you said yesterday are meaningless because they are exactly what you said in the 6 State of the Nation addresses you have given since you became president in 2018. None of the commitments you made during this State of the Nation addresses have been met. You state here that the vision you are operating under is still the National Development Plan Vision 2030, whose targets have never been met and will never be met. The NDP had targeted to create a certain number of jobs, but joblessness has increased. The NDP target was to reduce unemployment by 14% in 2020, but today unemployment is 32.9% and more than 12 million people are jobless. Even if you meet the target tomorrow of achieving 14% unemployment, the fact of the matter is you miss the target here. The NDP target was to reduce poverty from 39% by 2030, but poverty today is more than 50%. More people live on poverty under your presidency than any other period in the past 30 years. The NDP target was 10% of the GDP for infrastructure investment, but between 2010 and 2022, public sector infrastructure investment was not more than 5.8%. The NDP target was to grow the economy by an average of 5.4% for it to be practical to achieve any of the NDP goals. But in the past 10 years, the economy has not grown by more than 2%. Mr. President, Yesterday, you shocked all of us and will never recover from that shock. You said nothing about international relations while we are living in a world defined by shifting global balance of forces. The West, under the guidance and protection of the United States of America, is agitating for a world war, which will be defined by recolonization of the African continent and the global South. And you never said anything about that. There is an ongoing aggressive war by apartheid Israel over Palestine, and you never said anything about that because your coalition partners are all fanatics of a Zionist apartheid Israel. Shame on you that you said nothing about the genocide committed right in front of us because Olabaposo. You chose glory over the dying children and women of Palestine because you are scared to offend your coalition partners. President Mandela, a close friend of President Arafat, who you said we must celebrate yesterday, should be turning in his grave. The trade embargo against Cuba is still intact, and despite the fact that Cuba played a role in the struggle against apartheid, you never said anything about that. There is instability in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and South African soldiers are dying in that war, and you never said anything about that. There is a real threat of instability in the entire SADC region, and you never said anything about that. There is loss of life in South Sudan, but you had nothing to say about that. The BRICS Forum has been joined by additional countries such as Saudi Arabia, Ethiopia, Egypt, Argentina, Iran, and United Arab Emirates. And you never said anything about how South Africa should maximize these strategic relations to grow the economy. The North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, is agitating for a world war through its admission of Ukraine into NATO alliance, and you never said anything about that. This is happening while South Africa has discovered strategic oil and gas natural resources, which in itself, Minister Mantashe, it's a cause for global security, but your president said nothing about that. Even if the global balance of forces does not matter to you, there is nothing tangible you said about the high levels of crime happening in South Africa. In the past year, South Africa had more than 27,000 murder cases, and you never said anything about that. Are we being handed over to the imperialist takeover as South Africa? Mr. President, there are more than 300,000 students who have passed and attained their certificates, diplomas, and degrees, but all universities and universities of technology, huge amounts of money. We must cancel student debt and introduce free decolonized education now. You claim to have created 2 million jobs through your presidential employment stimulus, but there are no additional 2 million jobs that were created since you took office in 2018. And if you want to argue this point, go and argue with Stats SA. Another issue we need to highlight is that Kusile Power Station added an additional 800 megawatts into national grid 2 weeks ago. You never mentioned anything about that. Instead, you chose to mention 256 megawatts of unreliable energy by independent power producers, which was plugged into the grid in the Northwest Province. This is an evidence that in addition of selling fictional buffaloes at Palapala, you are also a salesperson for independent power producers. These independent power producers were at the center of why South Africa experienced perennial load shedding for years until 2 months before the elections. The land which our people desperately needed for human settlement, agriculture, public service, and business was left in the hands of the oppressors. Our people were told about willing buyer, willing seller, in a situation where violence and genocide were used to learn the dispossession of the Khoi, the San, and all indigenous people of our country. We'll amend Section 25 of the Constitution in our lifetime to allow expropriation of land without compensation. South Africa, our country, is being traded. We, the progressive forces, need to constitute an alternative radical agenda. Let us do everything in our power to rescue our country from being traded on a silver platter. We call on all workers' movement, civil society, religious leaders, and traditional leaders to reject this grand coalition led by DA under the pretense of the so-called government of national unity. We as the EFF will not form part of a factional and a decoy of the so-called national dialogue which happens after the government has already committed budgets and programs to this agenda. We are not in the business of talk shows. We are in an agenda to realize through economic emancipation of our people, and no matter what it takes, we will never associate with the collaborators and the sellout agenda of the establishment. Erekele butche nonyana phaku phaku ebya le tiye a re tshushike maru a utla bosele motho wa ba le matric wo a sankang aba subjected to a peer review comes here and calls us VBS looters. I understand the mind of a rat will not comprehend that is actually sitting with VBS looters themselves in the government of national unity. The same matriculant is a beneficiary of the loot of 20 billion of Steinhoff that was invested by public investment, by PIC. No amount of nonsensical threats of arrest can silence us. Not even death can silence us, because Mama Winnie Madikizela Mandela's voice has multiplied. Ours is a generational mission. We shall overcome. Victory is certain. We want to tell you now, your days are numbered. Thank you very much.
Order, honorable members. I now call upon the Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs.
Honorable Speaker, Honorable Chairperson of the NCOP, Your Excellency the President, honorable members of the 7th Parliament, the past few weeks have been a whirlwind of activity. Parliament has changed, portfolios have changed, cabinet have changed, and the government have changed. The people of South Africa who went to the polls on 29 May placed the future of our country for the next 5 years in the hands of a coalition government. Up front, I must declare that the IFP is committed in making the government of national unity stable and successful, for it is the result of the will of the people of South Africa. The GNU is not about politics, but is about the will of the people and the future of our country. We campaigned and expressed our views to the electorate, but the electorate in response said, work together. Your Excellency, the IFP has been frank and honest about the state of our country and the needs of our people. For 29 years, the IFP, led by Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi, remained in this house as a voice of reason, urging those in power to do the right thing. The late Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi, whether he spoke as a leader of a constructive opposition or as a minister of cabinet or as an acting president of the Republic, he taught us in the IFP of the duty we have to speak loudly on behalf of the people. We will continue to play that role constructively in the GNU for the good of our country. The GNU is a bold and necessary step in the right direction. We have repositioned South Africa to embark on a journey of rebuilding herself and the future of our generation and the generations to come. The real work of changing the lived reality of every South African must proceed with utmost haste. The change that voters demanded needs to be practically seen, felt, and experienced in the next few months. The IFP welcomes the plan laid out yesterday evening by the President in pressing the reset button and opening a new chapter for our country under a collective wisdom, skills, and capabilities of leaders who chose to work together for the sake of the people of South Africa. The IFP welcomes the position taken by the President about a review of the municipal funding model to ensure that municipalities can become fully functional. This will mark a turning point in our history's 30-year history. As we build on the foundations laid, let us build with new energy. The IFP believes that the local government is a critical sphere of government to impact the lasting development and change in the lives of the people of South Africa. It is for this reason that Cocta's budget speech this week was themed, open quote, every municipality must work, close quote. As the Minister of Cocta, I am determined to see all municipalities receive the administrative, technical, and financial support needed to become viable, able to deliver, and able to maintain the infrastructure, because that is what is mandated to do. I also thank the President for his commitment to appoint the political champions of the district development model to fast-track the one-plan solution. With the DDM institutionalized, champions working tirelessly, and Cocta playing its role, we will ensure that every municipality works. Because traditional and cohesion leaders are key role players in a stable democracy, the IFP will champion the interest and deepen the working in partnership with the traditional and cohesion leaders. Honorable members, climate change has placed us in a challenging times. Disasters are happening in rapid succession, necessitating a new approach to disaster management that is proactive, less bureaucratic, and timeous. The IFP is committed to the continued development of a new approach in dealing with disaster management. This week, I undertook assessment visits to areas in the Cape Metro and KwaZulu-Natal where communities have been devastated by floods and fires. Our deepest condolences remain with all who have lost loved ones in these disasters. As the Line Foundation Minister for Disaster Management, I gained clear insight from these victims into the needed interventions, enabling us to engage with communities, with multiple departments, putting together solutions. The government of national unity
Minister, can you please wrap?
must be revealed as a responsive, empowering force for good. It must work, as the IFP has always done, hand in hand with the people. The IFP is committed to a national dialogue to address social cohesion, landlessness, and the growing gap between the rich and the poor. We are committed in creating a stable GNU that is responsive and delivers. This is the commitment of the IFP to the people of South Africa. I thank you.
Thank you.